Good afternoon. I am Mark Albarado with the Government Information Division of the Office of the State Auditor, and I'll be giving a brief presentation on the CTAS accounting system, a little bit of a report overview. I have a pretty brief slideshow, and then I'm actually going to go through some reports that we at the office think that you might feel is helpful when looking at township financial business. So CTAS has numerous reports by module. Anything that you see right here with the double asterisk will be a report that we will actually be viewing later on in the presentation. But we have reports for accounting, budget, cash, the chart of accounts, vendors, numerous financial reports, and we'll be looking at quite a few of them later on. Tax filing for payroll information, a lot of payroll reports, and then investments and indebtedness reports. As you can see, there are a lot of reports available within the CTAS program. We're not going to look at all of them because we won't have time, but we will definitely be looking at a few that hopefully are interesting to supervisors. The reports are created from how data is entered into the CTAS program. So an example of a receipt must include a fund and account number, and program codes are optional. And we'll actually go through a program code report later in the presentation so you can see how they work. Disbursements must include a fund account number and object code. So we get another level of detail, an object code in a disbursement. Again, program codes are optional on this. So all the data for the reports that CTAS runs are based on how it's entered accounting-wise in the CTAS system. So let's take a look at a few reports. So these are the reports that we thought would be most helpful for supervisors to see. Some of these you might be a little bit familiar with, especially at the top portion of the list. They might be common if you're already using CTAS. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first report. This is the claims list for approval. Basically what this does, puts all the claims on 1 or 2 pages, or basically all the claims that you're looking to approve at a meeting, allows the board members, supervisors to sign off and approve all the claims at one time. So this way the board doesn't have to look and sign each individual claim. They can sign this one list, approving them all at one time. Typically these are approved at every board meeting or once a month, just depending on when you have your board meetings or what your timing is on them. The next report is the cash control statement. This is used to balance to your bank checking account statement. And this is the only report in CTAS that takes into account outstanding checks or outstanding deposits. So the only time this report should be used is just to verify that it actually balances to your bank statement. You want to make sure you're in line with the bank, plus that clerks and treasurers are balancing to each other. It's always a good check. And there have been a few times where when balancing to the bank statement, the bank has made errors too. So granted, we're kind of using CTAS to balance to the bank statement, but you can also make sure that the bank statement is correct also, because they have been known to make an error too also. So just remember, cash control statement is the only report that should be used to balance to the bank statement. Signing on the signature line just verifies that the board approves that yes, CTAS is in line with the check banking statement. Next, we have the net pay account distribution. So this is for each pay period and approves the issuance of the payroll. So basically signing here approves the payroll for that pay period. Just as you have to approve all claims get posted to disbursements upon approval from the board or supervisors. Payroll too also gets posted to disbursements, so it also should be approved by signature. So just signing here just approves the payroll, and then you can go ahead, post it to disbursements, everything's approved, and one can move forward. Now we're going to get into a little more of the financial statements here. Now this is a Schedule 1, and it is ran on a particular date. So what this shows you is a quick position of where the township currently is. Does not take into account any outstanding checks or deposits. Whatever entered in CTAS has been either added or subtracted from the beginning balance to give you the ending balance on this date. Okay, there's not a lot of detail in this report. When you look at the receipt column, it's just basically all the receipts for whatever fund is listed here. So it doesn't break down. We don't know if this $11,000 is property tax or license or permits. The detail's not there, but it gives you a great look at where you're standing right now per fund at this given moment in time as the report is run. So when you look at your ending balance here, what this one is basically showing is here's your beginning balance. So it's adding in your receipts, any investments that were withdrawn, any transfers in, then subtracting your disbursements, any money you put back into an investment, and your transfers out to end up with your ending fund balance. These together would actually be your total checkbook balance. And then the investments are a separate column. So if you have a separate savings, money market, CD, it'll add that to your fund balance to get you to your total balance. When viewing this report, there are a few things that board members should just be aware of. You can even help catch an error in CTAS. Your transfers in and your transfers out column should always match each other. If you're taking money out of one fund and putting it into another fund, transfers in and transfers out will always match. So when you're looking at that report, you can see that if you approved a transfer of money between funds, you can see real easily if the transfer out took place and that it went to the correct funds. So the Schedule 1, again, great for a quick, non-detailed peek at where the township stands financially on a given day. The Schedule 2 provides a breakdown of the receipts and disbursements by fund. So now you're going to see a little more detail. So now this one is for the general fund. And when we look, we can see some of that 11,025. It was made up of property taxes, some state credits, town aid, and then some gopher bounty aid. So your Schedule 2 is going to provide you more detail as far as the receipts and disbursements and how you get to that ending or the balances that were received in the Schedule 1. When you run a Schedule 2, it runs them. You can select just one fund, or you can run by all funds. For this presentation, I kind of ran it by all funds. So the next Schedule 2s will just be for the next fund. So here's the road and bridge. You can see that they got some FEMA money, and then your gas tax road allotment for their receipts, and then how the expenditures are broken out down below. One for the fire fund, and then one for a water fund. The next one is a Schedule 2A. This is similar to the Schedule 2. The only thing, it combines all the funds into one file, but it can only be exported into an Excel format. So basically, when I create this report, it brings it out in an Excel format, and then I have to widen a few columns, put in some underlines, just adjust a little bit. We're not changing the data. We're just doing a little bit with the format, putting the underlines underneath totals, items like that. So this is something that the clerk and treasurer or a combined clerk treasurer will need to make the minor formatting changes, and then you can either leave the file in Excel format or print it to PDF. I would say on a file like this with these 4 funds, once I exported the data into the Excel format, I would say it took me less than 2 minutes just to widen the columns a little bit, throw in a couple underlines underneath the totals, items like that. Now, I did create these. This is Schedule 2A in a PDF format in the portrait orientation. So I'm going more vertical here. But as you can see, it, instead of looking at the individual Schedule 2 funds, it puts them all in one and then lines up your totals. Here's an example of it in the landscape orientation. And again, once the Excel file is created, how you create your PDFs after that, will be up to the clerk or treasurer, or on how the board likes to see them. If they like to see all the funds on one sheet looking at a Schedule 2. Interim financial report by account number. This is where we're getting a little bit more in depth. It's the interim financial report by account number is a lot like a Schedule 2, but it gives you an option if you created a budget, which your entity, the township, would have to create a budget. It'll show you the variance between what you budgeted for an account, what actually came in, and then where you're at here. So currently we budget $10,000 to receive for property tax. We received 7,500 so far. We anticipate we're short 2,500. They usually come in 2 payments, so hopefully we'll get that variance up before the end of the year. Now, issuing or creating a budget in CTAS, I know there are quite a few townships that currently don't use the budget module. Cities have to. That's a requirement that the city has a budget. Townships don't. The budget is not too bad to put in. If you work with your clerk or treasurer, if you think you want to make a budget so you can look at these reports with budgeted compared to actual, entering the budget in the CTAS the very first time is probably the most difficult, and it's not difficult, it's just a little bit of time consuming because you have to enter every fund and account number that you want budgeted. Okay, once you get the original budget in, CTAS has a feature in it where if I just created a budget, let's say I started in 2022, I put my first budget in, now I want to go to 2023, CTAS has a feature where you can just roll the budget forward. So it will take all the data that we entered for 2022, roll it forward, and then we can just update the budgeted numbers. So once you get a budget into CTAS, not too difficult. First part, a little bit time consuming. But I think it's kind of interesting to see, a budget, see where you actually are, have a little bit of comparison there. And then also understand, a budget is just a budget. It's your best case estimate at what revenues and expenditures will be. I mean, there are going to be, you'll never be zero on your variance, or very rare. You're always going to be a little above or a little below. But I think it's kind of nice to have that and to reference that when you're looking at financial data. When we're looking at this report here by account number, we are going to reference this box in a later report, or actually the next report we're going to look at. But just keep in mind when you're looking at disbursements right now, because this is by account number, all we see is weed control and gopher bounty. So just the gopher bounty paid. So just the 2 account numbers is all we're seeing here. Okay, I'm going to reference back to this box here in just a minute. The next couple again are just same report, just a different fund. So now we're just looking at the road and bridge, comparing budget to actual. Fire and water. So same report, just different funds. So now we're into an interim financial report by object code. Again, this one's very handy with the budget, but where you're going to see the big difference here is now if I reference to the box before by account number, we just had weed control and gopher bounty. Now underneath weed control, it's breaking it out by the next level of detail, which is object code. So in the weed control account, we had 2 different object codes that were used with that: repairs and maintenance, and then professional services. So it'll actually bring in another level of detail. So it's actually one more step of detail in your financial reporting when you look at it by object code. So in these reports here, the interim reports can be ran at any point throughout the year or at the end of the year. So just kind of when you want to compare it, or they don't even have to be ran at every meeting, maybe every other one. You just want to actually see where we're at or where items are being dispersed. That's kind of what reports you want to see, is a little bit up to the board and what they need to see in the level of detail that they're requiring to make their financial decisions. So interim financial report by object code, just a little reminder, just brings that extra level of detail into the accounting on the disbursement side. Next couple of slides here or pages will be the same report, just with different funds. So this is for road and bridge, fire, and then your water. Now this brings us to the program code report. Now program codes are optional. What program codes are, they're used to keep details for either a project or a grant. The one that we're looking at here, when I created this report, I was just using the example that the township receives some FEMA money. We have to account for what we brought in and we have to spend that much, say on a certain project. So we want to know what came in and how much it was spent using this FEMA grant money. And this could be used for any project. If you have just a certain road project or you want to put a cartway in, culverts in a certain section, okay? What you would do is just instruct the clerk treasurer or combined clerk treasurer position to create a program code to track this project. When they are entering any receipts, they're just going to use that program code. Any disbursements, they're going to add that program code to that. So then when you come to run a program code report, you run it from a start to end date. And basically it will show you all the money that was brought in and all the money spent on this project or within this grant. So it's bringing it down to track a certain project. This is optional. So you might not want to use this, but if you do have a project where you'd want to track it or grant money, this is definitely a great report to use, the program code report. Next up, we have the statement of indebtedness. This will be for entities that have outstanding debt. Maybe you've issued bonds for something. You've taken out a loan to purchase a new plow truck, grader, etc. So what this report is going to tell you is going to tell you what kind of debt it is, whether it's a loan or a bond, when it was issued, how much is outstanding at the beginning of the year that you run the report, if you issued any new debt throughout the year, any debt paid, and then basically what's outstanding at the date that you run the report. So you can run this at any time if you want to just look at it at the end of the year if you have outstanding debt, or if you make, semi-annual payments, like on a bond, sometimes you'll have semi-annual payments. You could just look at it after your payments come in just to see, how much do we still have outstanding on our debt. This report only keeps track of principal. So just be aware of that. There's no interest involved. We're just looking at the principal amount that was paid off on the loan and the principal amount that is still outstanding when you're looking at the statement of indebtedness. So now we're into the investment activity. If the township has any CDs, money markets, savings account, these would be considered separate from your checking account, so they're considered investments. So basically you run this report from a start to an end date, and it's going to show you all information on what happened in these CDs or savings accounts. So it'll start you all with your beginning balance here, any deposits, interest earned, items like that, or money added to a CD or a savings account because you had extra money in your fund balance at a given point in time. And then any withdrawals, and it brings you to your ending balance. So this is a way to show the detail. If you remember, the Schedule 1 had just an investment column, again, with just the total of the investments. This will actually show you the detail behind the total of the Schedule 1. And then the final report that we have here is the City and Town Financial Reporting Form. So at the end of the year, per statute, all townships are required to submit a report to our office, which is basically their financial information for the year: revenues, expenditures, end of year balances, etc. So when you submit through the CTAS program, a lot of supervisors or even the clerk or treasurer, you don't see what you're submitting because it is submitting a file where the data is just compressed. It's in a format where it imports into the databases here at our office. So this is actually a report that you can print out that shows what you submitted to the Office of the State Auditor. Again, it's broken out by section. So as you can see, it's revenues and basically by category. As far as this, it does not go down to the fund detail. You know, we just see a total of property tax. We don't see how much was for the general fund or the road and bridge fund or the fire fund. We're just looking at total line items here. So basically it's broken out by category: taxes, any state, county, grants, aids, federal, so intergovernmental revenues, any charges for service that the township has, miscellaneous other items as far as transfers in, purchases and sale of investments. Then we have the expenditure section. Again, we just see more general items: governing board, admin, other general government. So it's just kind of breaking out the expenditures by category, not by fund, not too specific down to individual entries as far as the expenditures go. And then if you have an enterprise fund, we get information on that section. Any indebtedness would be reported to our office. And then just your final year-end balances. This is just a sum of basically your checkbook statement or whatever in your fund balances, and then any investments coming up with the total here. So this is just a report that's this last one would be more for just the town supervisor's information on what data was collected by our office through the CTAS program. So more of just a little reference point than actually probably something you would be looking at an actual meeting.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Someone asked if we could zoom in a little bit.
Which one?
Yeah, just to see some of this text a little bigger.
Just on all reports or just this last one?
This was 3 minutes ago. Jim wrote, could we zoom in a little bit?
3 minutes ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can. I mean, I can.
I know there's a lot.
Yeah, let me.
And then there's 3 questions in the Q&A and 1 in the chat whenever
Okay,
you're ready.
let me try to 3 minutes ago. I'll just kind of slowly go through the reports here, and then I will try to pick up the chat questions.
Oh, and someone wrote in the chat that you can zoom in on your own computer as well.
That would.
Like Jim, who asked as a participant, maybe he could change
Okay.
his device settings
Sure.
to see what you're displaying a little bigger, and then we will have the recording too. But sorry if I got you off track there.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I'll just kind of slowly page through these here a little bit, and then I'll try to answer some questions too. So first question, does your office have any intentions of making use of CTAS mandatory for townships? Not that I know of. It is not a mandatory program now, and in the future, I don't see it as being mandatory. I know that reporting electronically though, as far as if you don't use CTAS, we used to send out paper forms, but there's an Excel spreadsheet, you know, at some point, maybe that might be mandatory compared to just using the paper version. But right now I do not anticipate that CTAS will become a mandatory program. Can we get reports to download? Not to download, they would have to come from the CTAS program. Now the clerk treasurer could create these and export them to PDF and email them to you. But I as far as downloading, you'd have to have the CTAS program to actually create the report. How can we have a report under road and bridge that details the separate amounts that were spent under separate project, i.e. gravel surveying, grubbing, culverts? The purpose is to track separate costs of each item for the year, as well as to track separate project costs for historical budgeting purposes as we buy materials for various vendors. If you would create account numbers for the separate accounts, so gravel surveying, grubbing, culverts, etc., you could see them like in a Schedule 2 on a yearly report. It would break them out by there. To get it classified per project, you would have to have a program code. Then that program code would actually separate that out. And I believe if we look at the program code report, it would have the account number, and I happen to be showing it right now on my screen. It would have the account number. So if you know the grubbing account number, gravel, that, it would make it easier, but you'd only see the vendor. You know, as far as you'd have to know the account number to know that it was gravel or not. But in the, like a Schedule 2, you could have them list them out with account number and it actually show the account name, but it wouldn't have it by project. So it'd be a combination, I would say, of a Schedule 2 with the help of a program code report. Should get you the data that you need. What is the cost of the CTAS program? The cost of the CTAS program is $300. That was a one-time fee. We have not charged for any updates at all, and I believe we released the new version of the program in 2015. The investment module is cumbersome. Please rewrite how that works. 3 entries for interest can cause issues. Make it seamless in 1 entry. I will take it under consideration. How do we obtain the paper reporting form? Let me do this quick. So if you have any questions on any reports or on the paper reporting form, you can actually send an email or call the CTAS helpline. I will help you with the paper form, even though it's a CTAS question, not a problem. We can either email you one or mail you out a paper form, but just contact the office. Or you can also, I just have the CTAS helpline because this was geared a little more towards CTAS, but we also have the, it's called the Government Information Division. If you go on our website, there's a GID line also for that, on which you could just send us an email. We'll make sure you get a paper copy. Basically, just contact our office. The $300 is for all copies of a township CTAS a township wants. Correct. So for the question was originally, you know, for the $300 fee, you would get as many copies as the township needs. So if you have a clerk and treasurer and they both want to be on it, you get copies for the clerk and treasurer for the $300. You could get 4 copies if you have a clerk, treasurer, deputy clerk, deputy treasurer. Okay, so the $300 is basically currently right now a one-time entity fee. Okay, let me start on the chat questions. What is the typical? Oh no, these are still the chat questions from the previous.
Does it benefit a supervisor to have access to CTAS?
I don't know why a supervisor would want to have access to CTAS. They should be able to have the clerk treasurer pull out any reports. There gets to be a little bit, because there is payroll data in there, that the access to CTAS should be somewhat limited, you know, to just those being, you know, kind of involved in the payroll duty. I guess I've just never had too many supervisors who were looking to access the program. I mean, you could go in and run reports if you're looking at something where you want, but that stuff could just be requested from the clerk or treasurer too, on what reports you want to budget, and everything comes out electronically. I might have to ask my supervisor on that one. If you could get me that, or send the question to the email helpline, whoever, I'll put that in as the text.
And then the last one is about how far back do you have to keep bank statements, etc. Did you do that one?
No, I did not do that one, but that one is a data practice act. So there's actually a data practice agency that I believe it's on the Minnesota Association of Townships website. or they have guidelines for that. So that would be directed to a different agency. I would look on the, ask someone at the Minnesota Association of Township about the Data Practice Act, because I think they have, they have information on that on their website.
Super. And a comment, CTAS is not a network program. It runs independently on each personal computer, each PC.
Yeah, I think that was in regard to the question above it, and David answered that one. So yeah, because it is a standalone program and it's not networkable.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.